Indian Point suffered a rupture in one of the row 2 U-bends at the apex. All the row 1 tubes had been plugged at the time, and this was in the year 2000, February 15th, I think. And hindsight analysis of the eddy current data revealed, one, that previous inspections of that tube had yielded data that was very noisy, making analysis of that tube very difficult. But even in spite of that noise, there had been an indication in previous inspections that was so big that it rose above the noise, but had been missed anyway. I think one very interesting lesson learned from the Indian Point experience was the lack of, this interview is all about transferring experience, I guess, or knowledge. But there was no corporate memory at Indian Point as to why they had special requirements relating to denting and particularly hourglassing of the flow slot, support plate flow slots. I'm sure their staff back in the late 70s, early 80s knew very well why they were obliged to look for flow slot hourglassing in the upper support plate. It was a requirement, it was somewhat similar to requirements that existed at a number of other plants who had subsequently replaced their generators and no longer had these requirements in there. When they suffered the failure of the tube, nobody at the utility even asked any questions as to whether this might be related to denting or hourglassing. Nobody had that kind of memory or experience to understand the relationship, and it later determined. It later came to pass that yes, the additional stresses that led to the rupture of the tube that was a result of the flow slot hourglassing, that was a result of the denting. This was a mechanism that had been identified during the during the mid-70s. It's why plants like Indian Point were required to monitor the hourglassing over time. But in the intervening 20 years, the people responsible for engineering steam generator engineering at Indian Point lost sight of that early experience.